All right, let's talk about political division in America. My first guest, political researcher Lisa Miller, she did a fascinating study showing how people can hear the exact same message, but if they're told it came from a Republican or a Democrat, well, their reaction completely changes. So what does that say about who we are as a country? And is division necessarily a bad thing? Maybe it keeps us all honest. After all, we've never exactly been a nation of Stepford wives all nodding in agreement with each other. Here's our conversation. So, Lisa, walk me through the moment people flipped their opinion just because a label got slapped on the exact same sentence. What does that tell us about how tribal we've become in 2025?
Well, it's really a great question. And I started because with the election, the November election, I wanted to understand how the messenger impacted the message. And so I did this little social experiment. But basically what the data found is that our political affiliation is actually now greater than our objectivity, because depending on the messenger, it really clouds how we view the answer by a lot, statistically speaking.
So if folks are basically sort of copy pasting their party's talking points without even reading the policy, are we still debating ideas, or are we just cheering for jerseys at this point?
I love that. And you know what? It has become this idea of loyalty has really replaced this idea of curiosity. And let me give you an example. So I do 1,000 surveys each and every month. And so the experiment was 10 statements, unbranded. So think of it as a Coke and Pepsi test, right? And so unbranded, I asked the consumers questions. But then a third of the group got it brought to you by Democrats. A third of it got brought to you by Republicans. But the thing is, Paul, it was the exact same words. And what happened is if a statement was brought to you by a Republican and you are a Republican, you were way more likely to agree. But those same statements, if they were brought to you by a Democrat and you're a Republican, statistically, it dropped like 20 points. Let me just give you a quick example. So college tuition should be affordable, but taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for that. So when Republicans see that statement brought to you by Republicans, it's 7 in 10 say, I strongly agree. But if that same statement, same words, brought to you by a Democrat, that number among Republicans drops 25 points down to 44%. Well, and the same thing holds true. The same thing holds true on the other side. For Democrats, yeah.
You know, you've got all these people screaming, we've never been this divided before, but your data says that we'll love or hate a statement depending on who we think said it. So is that proof that the division has sort of been baked in for a long time, and maybe we're just louder about it now?
Well, it does go back, and another great question. It goes back, honestly, back in 2008 when social media started. And so what's happening is, we know the echo chambers, the more you watch a particular idea or station, you end up getting fed that much more. And again, I go back to just our curiosity. And so I don't know quantitatively if we are more divided in general, but I will tell you the emotion and the fear is louder. And when the fear is louder, that is not only really bad for the country, it's bad for the economy, because we become fearful of each other, but then it's bad just for our humanity and our kindness. And so it's really troubling to me that these gaps that it wasn't surprising, but the magnitude of the gaps, Paul, is what was so, to me, above shocking even what I was expecting.
Well, at what point does the sort of party blind loyalty stop being, healthy friction and it starts becoming dangerous groupthink?
Well, I think what can happen on this groupthink is that if it dulls our ability to interpret other ideas. So if it dulls our interpretation, we just stop listening. So before we can even get to, is this right or wrong? And there's no right or wrong. The idea of us versus them, sadly, has become good versus evil. And it's from both parties. The labels that are being created are just really not even appropriate. And so again, that fear happens, us versus them, and that's just team, that's belonging. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it becomes amplified, that's a problem.
What if we just took the party labels off every policy tomorrow? I mean, just hypothetically speaking, if we could get rid of the R, get rid of the D, Do you think that would make a difference, and would America suddenly agree on more if they didn't have those parameters in front of them all the time?
Well, what I wanted to encourage everybody out there is do your own little social experiment. Like, imagine you had these words, you hear them, and take the label off. It's literally like a Coke Pepsi blind taste test. Take the label off and understand yourself how you process it. So, could it be solved overnight? Absolutely not. Is the idea of two parties bad? No. But the idea that we've got to be able to listen more across the board. Otherwise, this division is only going to continue to get louder and more amplified, which honestly today is leading to violence, which is not good.
Lisa Miller, you've given us a lot to think about, and I appreciate your insight. Fascinating study. Thank you so much. The